Welcome to episode 709 of the Entertainment 2.0 podcast, brought to you by thedigitalmediazone.com. I'm Josh Pollard, and this is the show that puts you in control of your favorite movies, music, shows, and games. And that's right, unfortunately, it's been a couple of weeks, and we don't have Richard this week. But there's been a lot going on, and it's pretty much all my fault that we haven't had any episodes. It's also my fault that we don't have Richard this week because I had to do this on a night that Richard wasn't available. But yeah, things have been a little bit nuts. I have a new job and that's been keeping me pretty busy, but I'm really excited about it. I ran another half marathon. And if you're watching this on YouTube, then you can tell this didn't take that much time, but I also redecorated my office, so things look a little bit different in here too, along with all of the other changes happening in my life right now. So a lot going on in both my life and in the consumer technology entertainment space. So let's dig into that. We're going to really just focus on the three biggest stories of the last few days, and those would be that the new on 4K Pro Google TV device is sort of almost available, maybe is available because Walmart. Valve has decided they're just going to go ahead and release the Steam controller very, very soon, so we'll talk about that. And in maybe the most surprising thing that we've talked about in forever on this show, we're actually talking about a subscription service getting cheaper. And if you're a gamer, you're going to love this story. So we would normally jump into some listener feedback right about now, but we don't have any. So if you want to send us some for a future episode, our email address is entertainment20@thedigitalmediazone.com, or head on over to the website. All of our contact information is there, www.thedigitalmediazone.com. So let's get right into it with the news. And we're going to start, as we always do, with video news. There is a new video streaming device that, well, I don't know, if you walked into your Walmart, it might be available there right now. But as of the time that we're recording this device is listed on the website, but not for sale yet. And that is the new on 4K Pro Google TV streaming device. And so this is the top tier version of On's Google TV streaming boxes. On the last episode, we talked about their new streaming stick, which kind of sits in the mid-range of their capabilities. This is the one to get. So this one looks a lot like Google's own TV streamer that I can never remember the name of because all of these names are really long and complicated. But it costs less, and this one is a dark gray instead of a light gray of Google's device. But pretty similar specs across the board. It's got 3 gigs of RAM and 32 gigs of storage, so you should be able to load it up with plenty of apps and still have enough RAM also to keep all of those apps running. It's got an HDMI port, of course. It uses USB-C for power. It also has an Ethernet port. It's only 100 meg Ethernet, but that's fine. You're just streaming video, and no one is streaming video at a rate that would outpace a 100 meg Ethernet cable. But I do really love having my TV streaming devices have a wired connection. If you can't, it does have Wi-Fi 6, and it has a USB port, a USB-A port on it. But strangely, it's USB 2.0. So kind of the downgrade to USB 2 is kind of a bummer, especially if you're planning to hook a giant hard drive up to it for streaming videos, especially if you were going to do larger, 4K full res rips and things like that. It could become a problem, but I don't know. But honestly, I haven't tested streaming from a USB 2.0 device in over 10 years because who does that? Every device has a USB 3.0 port on it nowadays. So I don't know what to expect from that experience. One thing I do wonder, though, is it is using a USB-C port for power. And so it's possible that USB-C port is not just for charging. It could also be a USB 3 port, which would allow you to hook up a USB-C dongle or port extender or dock or whatever you want to call them. That people have different names for those devices, where you could plug in the power to that port extender and plug in a USB 3 hard drive. It's a very decent possibility that USB-C port supports it, but we don't know yet because the device isn't fully available. So there are only some people who have reported being able to find them in their local Walmarts, but you're going to be able to go in and get one soon. Again, this is the top tier model. So it is, of course, 4K. It also supports Dolby Vision. It's got the best version of their remote, which of course has a microphone on board for voice control. It also has a find button on the streaming box itself that will make the remote chirp so that if you lose it in the couch cushions or under the couch, you can find it. And the keys are backlit. So it's definitely the best keyboard or best remote control. And the cost? Well, these ON devices tend to be cheaper than a lot of the competitors. And this is, but not quite as cheap as you might have hoped. So it is $60, but that's still less than Google's version of this device. It's less than a Roku Ultra. It's way less than an NVIDIA Shield if you want to stay in the Google ecosystem. Way less than an Apple TV. So really, really good price. This is what I would absolutely put this in my living room. I've got their previous generation of essentially this device in my living room with very similar specs, and it's always rock solid. It's always performant enough. I have all of the streaming apps on it, and it's never been a problem. So I expect this device to work just as well, if not better, than the one that I bought a couple of years ago. So if you're in the market for a new Google TV streaming device, or you just want to check out Google TV in the best possible way without having to spend the most amount of money, this is the device to go and grab once it becomes available from Walmart officially. So now let's jump into some gaming news, and we are going to start with the best news, really the best news that we've gotten to report on in so long, I think, at least when it comes to subscription services. It seems like almost every episode we're talking about how the cost of yet another service is going up in money in terms of its cost. And now we finally get to report on one where they're decreasing the cost of it. Of course, we're talking about Xbox Game Pass here. Xbox Game Pass got a big price hike, a 50% price hike, only 6 months ago. And it led to a lot of people canceling their subscriptions. I actually even downgraded mine once mine lapsed. I switched to premium. And, well, Xbox has a new boss. Asha Sharma is making a lot of changes, and she's not wasting any time making them. And she recognized the problem of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate costing $30 a month. And so she decided, we're going to change it. So how much is she dropping the price? Is it all the way back to what it was 6 months ago at $20? No, not quite, but pretty close. So it's going from $30 a month down to $23 a month. $7 a month is a lot, and it might really come in handy because the way that they're doing this is they do have to take something away. And what they're taking away is Call of Duty, sort of. So the way that it's been working as of last year is Call of Duty, it's a first-party Microsoft game now that Microsoft bought Activision Blizzard King. It became a first-party game for Xbox Game Studios, and so they started including it for free day one for Game Pass Ultimate subscribers. That's changing now. Game Pass Ultimate, there will be 0 tiers of Game Pass that include the next Call of Duty on day one. It won't happen. Instead, you're going to get Call of Duty the following holiday season, which Call of Duty comes out typically in October, sometimes November, but typically October. So you'll get it in Game Pass about a year later, which is pretty similar to how the Game Pass premium subscription tier works. That tier, which cost $15 a month, yes, half of what Ultimate used to cost, was you wouldn't get most of the games on day one, at least not the major first-party games. So, for example, Forza Horizon 6 comes out in like 3 weeks. I'm practically counting down the days. I'm so excited for that game. That will be available day one if you are a Game Pass Ultimate subscriber. But if you're a Game Pass Premium subscriber, you're going to have to wait. And they never tell you how long you'll have to wait. They just say it will be up to 1 year. So Call of Duty is basically going to work inside of Ultimate the way that a lot of games have been working in the premium tier. And that's maybe a bummer if you liked having Call of Duty there to play occasionally. That's kind of how I viewed it. But you're saving $7 a month over a 12-month period. That more than pays for you going out and just paying for Call of Duty on day one. If you want it on day one, you can just buy it and it will cost you less than if you had been paying $30 a month for Game Pass Ultimate for all of that time. So, but frankly, I'll just go back to what I had been doing. Call of Duty comes out in October. By Black Friday, it's on sale. It's usually like 40% off for Black Friday, a month after it comes out. That's how you really win the game here at getting Call of Duty for cheaper. The existing version of Call of Duty that is available on Game Pass, nothing changes there. It's still on Game Pass, but it's just that this, 2026 version of Call of Duty will not be available day one in Game Pass. It's not just the console version of Game Pass that is seeing a price cut. The PC version of Game Pass is also having its price cut because it also received a pretty big price increase in last fall when they did these huge increases across the board. But PC Game Pass is now going down from $16.50 a month to $14 a month, and it's basically for the same reason. So there you go. You finally get to save a little bit of money on a subscription service, and it's one that I really, really like. I still think the Game Pass is an excellent value for the money. I think Ultimate makes a ton of sense if you play a lot of games and you care a lot about getting them right away. If you don't care as much about getting them on day one, then maybe drop down to the premium tier at $15 a month. That's what I did. Even though Forza Horizon 6 is coming out, I had a bunch of Microsoft reward points. I turned them into Xbox gift cards and I just bought Forza Horizon 6 that way. So I'm going to save the extra $7, $8 a month by being on premium for, it doesn't really matter to me. So premium works for me. Okay. Last gaming news story of this week. Let's talk about Valve's latest news. Last fall, they announced a bunch of new hardware. They announced the Steam Machine. They announced the Steam Frame VR headset. And they announced a new Steam controller. And then they delayed all of it because of Ramageddon, as the internet is now calling it. The cost of RAM and storage devices has shot through the roof since last November. And Valve still hasn't figured out when they're going to ship the Steam Machine or the Steam Frame because they don't know what to price it at with how volatile the memory and storage market is right now. They've just said that we promise, guys, we'll ship it in 2026. But we've all been wondering, all right, that makes sense for the Steam Machine and the Steam Frame, but what about the Steam controller? That you ought to be able to ship, right? And they said, okay, yeah, you're right, we can. So they are. And the Steam controller is going to be coming out in just a couple of weeks. You're going to be able to get it on May 4th. Actually, that's not a couple of weeks. That's next week. So you're going to be able to get this really soon. And what is the Steam controller? Why do you want this? Well, if you've ever looked at a Steam Deck, it's like they took the Steam Deck and cut out the screen that's in the middle of it and just gave you the controller. That's what it looks like. It's dual analog sticks and A, B, X, Y buttons on the top, plus a D-pad and triggers and shoulder buttons and all of that. And then below it on both sides is a large haptic touchpad, similar to what you might have on a laptop, or much more similar to what is actually on the Steam Deck controller. So this is coming out. It looks pretty awesome. It looks way more usable than the Steam controller that they released in, was that 2014, I think? This actually looks really cool. And if you're a Steam gamer, it's going to work out really well for you. And you're like, Josh, don't you just mean a PC gamer? No, I don't. I mean a Steam gamer, because that's the one downside of this controller. It only works inside of Steam. If you've got a PC running Steam, it'll work. If you've got a mobile device and you're using the Steam app to stream from another device or whatever, it will pair with that and work. But if you're just using this on your Windows PC to play Forza Horizon from Game Pass or something like that, it won't work. It only works inside of Steam, which seems insane to me. Like, just release some regular drivers for this thing for Windows. Why wouldn't you do that? Like, most of your gamers are going to use this inside of Steam. The vast majority of time, they'll use it inside of Steam. But some PC gamers play games from other marketplaces too, and it's a sweet controller. And it's one of these things that, like, you sell the controller, and it's kind of an introduction to what this ecosystem fully offers. It's a good controller. The people who are reviewing the controller say it feels great, it works really well, it's comfortable. Yeah, it looks a little funny, but it's a good controller. I mean, other than the fact that it's not offset thumbsticks, I'm going to be an offset thumbstick guy forever. The Xbox controller is better than the PlayStation controller, but this looks and sounds like a pretty good controller. It is a little bit pricier. You know, we're used to the cost of all of these getting more expensive, so maybe I just need to, check myself on my expectations for the cost of hardware in 2026 when everything is so much more expensive. It's a $99 controller. So that's more than your average Xbox or PlayStation 5 controller, but it's also less than things like the SCUF controllers and some of the more advanced Pro controllers from everybody, Sony, Microsoft, all of them. They all have options for controllers that are a lot more expensive than this. So $99, it's not a terrible price, especially for the functionality that you're getting, especially with those onboard touchpads. Those can be really useful if you're seated away from your screen and you don't want to like reach up to use your mouse, or maybe you've got your computer hooked up to your television in your living room and you don't want to have a keyboard and mouse handy on the couch. Like, you can just use this controller, and that's what's really nice about it. So $99 coming in just a few days on May 4th. Okay, so that's it for our news this week. Let's get into what's going on in our entertainment centers. And for me, like I said, I've been really, really busy. It's also the Stanley Cup playoffs. And until last night, my team was in the playoffs. Surprising most Penguins fans. The Penguins did make it to the Stanley Cup playoffs. So I've been watching them and a lot of other playoff hockey. And we also watched the remaining episodes of The Pit. Didn't disappoint. Season finale, absolutely excellent. Loved it, loved it, loved it. Absolutely my favorite show of the last couple of years. That's pretty much it for what I've been watching, and no movies in there either. In terms of gaming, really nothing out of the ordinary there either. Occasional games of NHL, a little bit of Helldivers 2 with my friends, and the last couple of times we've gotten together, I was like, guys, I'm just so excited about Forza Horizon 6. Maybe we should play some Forza Horizon 5. So we've been just doing random races and stuff in Forza Horizon 5 too, because even though that game is a few years old at this point, it's still really, really good. It's also on Game Pass Premium. So you can check that out, and maybe that will convince you as to whether or not you want to pay a little bit extra to bump up to Game Pass Ultimate to be able to play Forza Horizon 6 when it comes out in about 3 weeks, or just pay for it, because I'm sure it's going to be another 10 out of 10 game. Playground doesn't miss with Forza Horizon games. And this one in Japan, man, if you love Japanese cars like I do, this is going to be so good. I am so pumped for Forza Horizon 6 in a few weeks. Okay, but I've also been reading a book. I've been reading a book called, and I have to slow down to say this every time. This is my least favorite part of the book, is the title. Dungeon Crawler Carl. The author is Matt Dynaman? I'm not sure. This is a book that is about a guy and his cat who stuff happens and he basically ends up inside of a role-playing game. A dungeon crawling role-playing game. Sort of like Diablo. More like the kind of classic Diablos. And it's a lot like reading a story of a video game happening in progress. And that might sound kind of boring, but it's not. It's actually really, really interesting. It's really well written. They do talk about the stats and what's in the loot boxes and stuff like that, but it's not so overdone that it's just too much, right? And maybe the most surprising aspect about all of this to me is that my wife, Jen, is the person who recommended this to me. She doesn't play games. She doesn't play video games. She doesn't play, tabletop RPGs. This should not be a book that she likes, but she loves it. And she was like, I think you're going to like this. You understand this world a lot more than I do. And I waited around for a couple of weeks, and then I thought, all right, fine. I'm ready for my next book. Let's check this out. And it's really fun. And the audiobook is exceptionally well done. The narrator or narrators maybe are really, really good at distinguishing the various characters, and it's a lot of fun. It is really, really fun. So I think now that I'm thinking about it, this might be an Audible exclusive in terms of audiobooks. I'm not positive. My wife bought it or probably used an Audible subscription token, whatever they call the monthly limit to buy a free book. Credit, that's the word. She probably used Audible credits on these books, but she's loving them. There's multiple books in the series, and I think she's at least on book 3 and really, really enjoying all of it. And I'm almost done with book 1 and really enjoying it too. So I've talked about a lot of depressing books over the last 6 or so months, like Nuclear War and things like that. Theo of Golden, which I mentioned a couple of episodes ago, was really heartwarming and uplifting. And this one is just mostly fun. I mean, there's some death and stuff. It's not all. It's not nearly as heartwarming, I would say, as something like Theo of Golden, but it's fun. It is a fun video game story. Video games are finally turning into good movies, and here's an example of a video game turning into a good book, too. Okay, well, that's going to do it for what's going on in my entertainment center and for most of the show. If you want to find out even more about everything I talked about on this week's show, you can get our show notes and all of our contact information over at www.thedigitalmediazone.com. We'll have links to everything, including where you can find Richard and I on socials. But I'm at Josh Pollard on X and on Blue Sky. Please talk to me on Blue Sky. I'd much rather be there than on X. Richard is Richard Gunther on Mastodon, and he's richardgunther.com on Blue Sky. And please, even if YouTube is not your primary way of checking out podcasts, go and do us a favor. Subscribe to our channel, maybe give a thumbs up to our video. and help us spread the word on YouTube also. But that is going to do it for episode 709. I'm Josh Pollard. Thanks for listening to Entertainment 2.0. Adios.